For my research project, I wanted to research how boys are depicted in media, often with the stereotype of being masculine. This masculine stereotype includes being insensitive, aggressive, muscular, and fit. My research question is, do young children's television shows represent men and boys as lacking in emotion and sensitivity, and prone to violence in order to influence the behavior of developing boys? The social learning theory is the theory that I believe is at play here. The theory says that people watch, learn, and imitate what they see. According to this theory, an overwhelming depiction of boys and men in the masculine light could lead to boys and men imitating this stereotype. This results in them being unable to express themselves. There is some previous research regarding the representation of boys and how it affects them. The first article I found aimed to see if children reacted differently to sad scenes based on their gender, and if children like things based on how much they perceive it to be for boys or for girls. The results concluded that girls had an easier time expressing sadness, and that gender differences' intensity of emotion increased with age. This shows that the masculine stereotype of insensitivity is being represented and is influential. This article used a twofold study to first measure a man's comfortability with the stereotype and how they react to instances that oppose the stereotype. They used a survey and a video of a man crying. The results showed that men who conformed more to the masculine stereotype were more likely to respond with fear at the video of a man crying. Men who did not experience a fear or avoidance response to a video of another man crying were less likely to conform to the masculine gender stereotype. This also shows that the masculine stereotype of representing men as emotionless is very influential. The last article examined men's own beliefs about their bodies in relation to how much they consume television. The results concluded that media ideals of men being lean and muscular can be deleterious to a male's mood and body satisfaction. The research also showed that after viewing images of ideal males on television, the men's muscle dissatisfaction and depression increased. This definitely shows us that the muscular masculine male representation has an effect on male viewers. In order to see if young boys and men were being depicted in this masculine light, to influence young boys to act the same, I wanted to analyze forms of media aimed towards young children. I chose 4 shows on Disney Channel to see the extent to which the masculine stereotype was represented and how this could potentially affect our boys. The shows were Bizaardvark, Andy Mack, Austin and Ally, and The Gamer's Guide to Pretty Much Everything. This episode was Halloween themed. In the first scene of the show, you notice that the girls' Halloween costumes are normal representations of things: salt, pepper, and a unicorn. However, the first boy's costume to appear is a muscular jack-o'-lantern, called a jacked jack-o'-lantern. This is representative of the stereotype saying men must be muscular and strong. This character represents the stereotype further later in the show by always talking about working out. There were no further instances of the masculine stereotype represented. Andy Mack had a somewhat different representation of male characters. This typical masculine stereotype was only exemplified with the lack of sensitivity of men in the beginning of the episode. Andy asks her male counterpart to think of a moment in his life where he felt something, joking that he only had 3 of those moments. The male counterpart agreed, saying, "I can only think of 2. This represents the desensitizing aspect of the male stereotype. These were the only aspect of representation of the male stereotype that I saw. Austin and Ally had more general representations of the masculine stereotype. In the intro to the show, the main character, Austin's intro, shows him holding his arms up to show off his biceps in a classic muscular pose. This demonstrates classic strength and masculinity. There is also a part in the show where they make a joke about Austin receiving a pink glittering headband. This provides the impression that it is not right, fitting, or masculine to wear such an item. These were the only instances of the masculine stereotype that I saw as evidence in the show. Gamer's Guide to Pretty Much Everything was definitely lacking in the representation of the strong masculine stereotype. There were 3 main male characters and 1 main female character in a gaming setting, which could be telling. There was also 1 main character that was very violent and mean. This falls into the gray area. However, the show represented 3 examples of boys touching, hugging, or being in close physical contact with one another, which go extremely against the stereotype of masculinity. In general, the masculine stereotype was represented in 2 main ways: the representation of being muscular and fit, as is evidence in Bizaardvark and Austin and Ally, and the representation of being insensitive, as is evidence in Andy Mack. Not one of the shows represented their male characters overwhelmingly as the masculine stereotype, and more often than not, the male stereotype was not represented, as in Gamer's Guide. These representations of the masculine stereotype could be somewhat detrimental to developing young boys, but the contrast between the personalities of the male characters was actually impressive and surprising. Some instances of the male stereotype were proven to be true, but they were not shown all the time or for every show. The results found were inconsistent. I think a media solution strategy would be to try and stay away from representing men as muscular, fit, and emotionless, or rather, to represent females more as muscular, fit, and emotionless. If girls were represented more as having feelings and behaviors that we as society deem as masculine, we could be able to dissolve the idea of masculinity. Females and males alike should be represented in a more broad and diversified way so that no stereotype of any gender is represented. I think that one area where I could have done more research is finding television shows that are more geared towards young boys rather than young children in general. Many of these shows that I picked had more female cast than male and seemed to be geared more towards a female audience. This may have been why they portrayed males in a more emotional and diversified sense. Overall, even though my findings were inconclusive, I think further research needs to be done on the subject. It's clear from my literature review that the masculine stereotype is represented and has a concrete effect on males. I suppose the question that remains to be answered is where is this representation in TV and when does the social learning take place? Overall, I'm happy that I detected some patterns in the shows that I chose to analyze, but need more answers in order to definitively answer my research question.